And we are recording. Welcome everyone to our beautiful Sunday morning Bible study. Glad you're here. So let's get right to it then. Let me see if I can reduce this window a little bit so I can read the text, actually. It would be good. All right, sometime after this, the cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker committed an offense against the Lord, the king of Egypt, and Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. And he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard in the prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be with them, and he attended them, and they continued for some time in custody. And one night they both dreamed, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, each in his own dream, and each dream with its own interpretation. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were troubled. So he asked Pharaoh's officers who were with him in custody in his master's house, "Why are your faces downcast?" They said to him, "We have had dreams, and there is no one to interpret them." And Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Please tell them to me." So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph and said to him, "In my dream there was a vine before me, and on the vine there were three branches. As soon as it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and the clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand." Then Joseph said to him, "This is the interpretation. The three branches are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office, and you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as formerly when you were his cupbearer." What is the role of the cupbearer? What's that? Carries the cup around, but he also is the taster to make sure that there's nothing's going to kill the king. How would you like to have that job? I mean, that's high honor, though, I'm telling you. But what happens if you drop dead? Then you sacrifice yourself for the life of the king, right? Long live the king. Then Joseph said in verse 14, "Only remember me when it is well with you, and please do me the kindness to mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this place. For I was indeed stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I've done nothing that they should put me into the pit." When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was favorable, he said to Joseph, "I also had a dream. There were 3 cake baskets on my head, and in the uppermost basket there were all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating it out of the basket on my head." And Joseph answered and said, "This is its interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat the flesh from you." Fun. On the third day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast for all of his servants and lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand, but he hanged the chief baker as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. That's just not cool, is it? Not very nice. Then, listen to this, after 2 whole years. So 2 years since this event took place. That's kind of a long time, right? The older you get, though, the faster they go. So 2 years isn't really that long. For in 2 months, I will have been here 3 years already. How about that? Incredible, isn't it? Unbelievable. Okay, after that nice hot cup of coffee, after 2 whole years, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile. And behold, there came up out of the Nile 7 cows, attractive and plump, and they fed in the reed grass. And behold, 7 other cows, ugly and thin, came up out of the Nile after them and stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. And the ugly, thin cows ate up the 7 attractive, plump cows. And Pharaoh awoke, and he fell asleep and dreamed a second time. And behold, 7 ears of grain, plump and good, were growing on one stalk. And behold, after them sprouted 7 ears, thin and blighted by the east wind. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump full ears, and Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. So in the morning his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the what? The magicians of Egypt and all of its wise men, all the pagans that he could round up. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them to Pharaoh. Divine? So God is in control of all of this, right? Then the cup chief bearer said to Pharaoh, I remember my offenses today, when Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me and the chief baker in custody in the house of the captain of the guard. We dreamed on the same night, he and I, each having a dream with its own interpretation. A young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. When we told him, he interpreted our dreams to us, giving an interpretation to each man according to his dream. And as he interpreted to us, so it came about. I was restored to my office, and the baker was hanged. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they quickly brought him out of the pit. When he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came in before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream. There is no one who can interpret it. I've heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph answered Pharaoh, it's not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, behold, in my dream, I was standing on the banks of the Nile. 7 cows, plump and attractive, came up out of the Nile, fed on the reed grass. 7 other cows came up after them, poor, very thin and ugly, or ugly and thin. And as such, I had never seen in all the land of Egypt. And the thin, ugly cows ate up the first 7 plump cows, but when they had eaten them, no one would have known that they had eaten them, for they were still ugly as at the beginning. Then I awoke. And then I'm going to keep jumping down instead of reading that whole thing over again. Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 ears are 7 years. The dreams are one. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty ears are ears blighted by the east wind are also 7 years of famine. It is as I told Pharaoh, God has shown to Pharaoh what he is about to do. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. But after them there will arise 7 years of famine, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. Stop right there. Stop. No, the famine will consume the land. Then stop. Has there ever been a drought here in Northwest Mo? Like really bad?
7 years.
There was a drought in Wichita Falls, Texas, the place where we came from. There was a drought, I believe, that lasted 5 to 7 years, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it finally ended in 2011. In 2011, the drought was so severe that the people in the city of Wichita Falls were drinking toilet water. Not that you're thinking of, it was recycled toilet water, because the lakes were so low that they had no water. They were literally bringing water in, and they were thinking that if this drought continued, then the city would be lost. It would just dry up. There would be no life there, because there's no way they could haul in enough water to, it's 100,000 people there. So there's no way they could continue to haul water in. The lakes from 100% full went all the way down to less than 20%. You could see across Lake Wichita, which we lived by, Michelle and I lived by when we were there, and never saw it as we did when we saw it in 2011 when we had gone down there to visit my brother and his family. So we saw it. You could walk probably halfway across the lake, and there was just a small puddle of water that was left in the middle of it, and it was cracking. You know how you see stuff cracking and big crevices in the ground and everything. It was awful. But then in one spring, the skies opened. I mean, before I say that though, they did everything that they could possibly do. They took up planes up into the clouds and they dropped certain chemicals, ions, or whatever it was that they put in the sky so that it would spark, you know, uh, thunderstorms. Nothing. Never worked. So can man play God? It doesn't work, does it? So the point being is that if there's a severe famine, it's only by the grace of God that you're going to survive. But in one spring, they got enough rain to completely fill all the lakes in the entire area of that part of Texas. It was incredible. So, and you know what? They haven't been like that since. They've had some dry times, but it hasn't been like that since. But it was something to behold. So when we talk about this, it's unless you've experienced it, so that everything is absolutely dry. Now, I will tell you this: down in Southwest Missouri, down in Monette, when we had our house, and it was in a neighborhood that people like to immaculately take care of their yards, if that makes sense. So everybody had their watering systems going and it was lush and green and blah, blah, blah. It was, we had times almost every July when the grass, no matter how much you watered it, just dried up and you would walk across and it just sounded crispy and it was brown and just not attractive at all. So, um, that was pretty severe though. You'd go for, good 30 to 60 days and not see any rain whatsoever, but it always replenished itself every spring. Just like kind of some, modern day things that help us get into the story. But imagine this for 7 years, uh, it's going to just go up. It's just going to be going away. And this is what led to all of Jacob or Israel's family ending up coming to Egypt and being saved by Joseph. And so when we get to the point where Joseph says to his brothers, you all meant this for evil, but God meant it for good. And so that's where this is all going to come about. But this is the beginning of the story and kind of an interesting conclusion, really, to Genesis, because it's going to just flow this way through the rest of the book. All right, so verse 31, and the plenty will be unknown in the land by reason of the famine. So the 7 years of plenty that you're going to have, it's going to be forgotten because of how severe the famine is going to be. And verse 32, and the doubling of Pharaoh's dream means that the thing is fixed by God and God will surely bring it about. Now, therefore, by the way, the doubling, because of the doubling of God, do you recall in the scriptures the doubling of God other than this particular instance? What do I mean by the doubling of God?
Being generous with whatever they needed.
Okay.
Letting it came where they had to
Okay.
turn to God.
All right. Good. What else?
I'm a glass half empty kind of guy, Dan. I'm thinking of when,
Well, we knew that, Jerry. I mean,
when Black Pharaoh ran for not letting the Egyptians go.
hmm.
Oh, letting the Hebrews go. Sorry.
Right. Yes. But remember, there's like 400 years that they were enslaved. You know what I mean? That there was a long time that the Israelites and the Egyptians were good friends. And then there came a day at the beginning of Exodus when the story about Pharaoh and Joseph interpreting his dreams and everything and making Joseph second in command of over all of Egypt, that story over history fades. And that's why, um, because of the reproductive situation that was happening with the Israelites, they became numerous. And that's why Egypt enslaved them, because they were afraid that they were going to overtake them. And then maybe it was, God having fun with them like that. Who knows? Anybody else want to give it a stab on the doubling of God? What I mean by that? What I mean by that, what I'm hinting around at by that, that's not a bad interpretation. I like that, about his generosity. It, gives us more than we need. But what I was thinking of specifically is when God says something twice, like truly, truly, I say to you. When he doubles down like that, that even happens in the Old Testament. But Jesus, speaking truly, truly, I say to you, that's what comes first to my mind. But there are doublings of the Hebrew, and we can see it in the English that's being spoken. So when he doubles down on something that he's about to say, then that means something big is about to happen, or something. It's a kind of a huge, monumental statement or doctrinal, teaching of some sort. So that's kind of what he was talking about here, because he gave him a double dream with the same ending, which means that what it says right there, that God fixed this and God will shortly bring it about. Just some thoughts there. Verse 33 says, "Now, therefore, let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh proceed to appoint overseers over the land and take 1/5 the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plentiful years. And let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. That food shall be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine." Now Joseph rises to power. Now, because he's able to interpret the dreams, now he becomes second in command over all of Egypt. This proposal pleased Pharaoh and all of his servants, and Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find a man like this in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has shown all this to you, or you all this, there is none so discerning and wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards the throne, I will be greater than you." So stop there for a minute. How did Joseph look in the pit, in the prison? Well, it says he had to shave himself and get cleaned up and presentable to go before the Pharaoh. So obviously he was probably thin, malnourished, and scraggly looking with a beard that hung down to mid chest. You know what I'm getting at here? Long hair. Fingernails, have dirt under them. That kind of look, the people. So, anyway, he got cleaned up, and then he becomes, by all rights, Egyptian. He's still a Hebrew, but he's going to look like an Egyptian. How did most Egyptian men look? Shaved? Maybe bald? Why am I saying that? Cecil B. DeMille's 10 Commandments? Just a thought? I don't know. But I'm just saying that they looked different. They wore different garments. Did they wear like brass, rings on their arms and other brass bands and things like that? Yes. Yes, they did. Did they have sandals on their feet and look regal? Yes. Okay. So now that we're kind of getting a mental picture here, do you understand how with Joseph in second in command over all of Egypt, how he would have looked very powerful? Yes. So, do you understand now, after several years, how old was he when he got sold into slavery, when he was thrown into the pit by his brothers? How many of you were listening?
It's pretty nice, and his dad's beautiful coat gave him. Oh, age young, so.
No, well, I mean, he was 17 years old. And just remember, years have passed now. Since he's grown up, he's going to look like a different man. Most men don't look like they did when they were 17. Right? Anybody want to go back to 17? Yes. I want the body back I had at 17. And it's not all that great. Trust me. You have to go through the process twice. It's not great. So anyway, the point being is that he looked different. So his brothers obviously would not recognize him. He's going to be Egyptian for all practical purposes. So then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his hand, verse 42, and put it on Joseph's hand and clothed him in garments of fine linen. See what I'm talking about? And put a gold chain about his neck. How many Hebrews do you know that have a gold chain on their neck? Well, I don't know about today. I'm just talking about back then. Who knows? And he made him ride in his second chariot, and they called out before him, bow the knee. Thus he set him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without your consent, no one shall lift up hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. What did he think about Joseph? Did he appreciate what he was able to do for him? Obviously, yes. Pretty impressive. Then Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zephanath Paneah. How about that Egyptian name? He'd be like, that's cool, man. Just call me Joe. Right, Joe? Yep. It's easier than, maybe we should change your name to Zephanath Paneah. That means the same as Joe, right? All right. And he gave him in marriage, to him in marriage, Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. So Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. Joseph was how old now? Oh, when he entered the service of the king of Egypt. So he was 17 years old when he was thrown in the pit. Now he's 30 years old. Do you think he looks different? Yes. Yeah. All right. And he went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went through all the land of Egypt. During the 7 plentiful years, the earth produced abundantly, and he gathered up all the food of the 7 years, which occurred in the land of Egypt, and put the food in the cities. He put in every city the food from the fields around it. And Joseph stored up grain in great abundance, like the sand of the sea, until he ceased to measure it. For it could not be measured. So how abundant was the 7 years? Right? I think about if we were told by God through some kind of messenger that there was going to be a famine in the land, how many of us would actually prepare for it? The reason why I'm asking that is because I feel like, we Americans, we have a lot of waste. Would y'all agree with that? How many of you grew up in the era, clean everything off your plate or you're not getting up from the table? I still live like that. But anyway, the point being is these days, if you see what we leave on our plate, or if you hang out at the dumpster at McDonald's, not that I do, you would notice that there is so much food wastage. It's incredible. So, our homeless group here in town could hang out over there and they would be fed well, or any restaurant as far as that goes. Isn't that a strange thought for me to have? Let me ask y'all this. How many of you drive up and down Frederick on a regular basis? Do you know that we have our own version? I don't know if I've talked to you about this or not, but we have our own version of Skid Row. There are homeless people lining that road. Do y'all know that? They hang out on the sidewalk. You can see their belongings. You can see their little makeshift, tents that they try to make at night and their cardboard boxes that they sleep in. I have noticed a church that has Have y'all seen the Kearns van, that big white van that's out there in the church parking lot? They have a van kind of like that that's gutted, and they have a, I don't know if they have a kitchen in it or if it's a food truck or what it is, but they come down there occasionally and they park in a parking lot down there, and all of the homeless people gather around that truck and they're feeding them meals like once a month, I believe. Maybe once a week. I've only seen them a couple of times. But it's I've only seen them once a month. I mean, like, I've drawn the conclusion that it's once a month because I see them about once a month. All right. So I see them doing this and I'm thinking, it's incredible that they do that to feed the people. And I'm assuming that our food kitchen still runs. We're not working in it, but it still goes, right? It's kind of a cool ministry. Kind of be nice to have it again, but we need more people. All right. So just a thought there. I was thinking about hungry people and our hungry population that is ever increasing here. All right. Verse 51, Joseph called on the name of the firstborn Manasseh. Is that an interesting name? Are we going to hear that again? Ephraim and Manasseh, right? For he said, God has made me forget all my hardships and all my father's house. The name of the second is Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. The 7 years of plenty that occurred in the land of Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph had said. There was famine in all the lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread, because they had massive amounts of storehouses with grain, correct? When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph, what he says to you, do. When the famine had spread over all the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Moreover, all the earth came to Egypt to Joseph to buy grain, because the famine was severe over all the earth. Now Joseph's brothers go to Egypt. When Jacob learned that there was grain, who's Jacob? Israel. They keep going back and forth. He said, no longer will you be known as Jacob, it's Israel. And now they keep flip-flopping again. When Jacob learned that there was grain for sale in Egypt, he said to his sons, why do you look at one another? And he said, behold, I've heard that there is grain for sale in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die. So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers, for he feared that harm might happen to him. Why would he ever think that? Thus the sons of Israel, now there's Israel again, came to buy among the others who came for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over the land, and he was the one who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke roughly to them. Justified or not? Where do you come from? He said. They said, from the land of Canaan to buy food. And Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. And Joseph remembered the dreams that he had dreamed of them and said to them, you are spies. Remember, his brothers were going to come and bow down before him. Did that come true just now? Yes. Yes, it did. So he remembered them. You're spies, and you come to seek the nakedness of the land. They said to him, no, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies. He said to them, no, it is the nakedness of the land that you have come to see. And they said, we, your servants, are 12 brothers, the son of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is no more. But Joseph said to them, It is as I said to you, you are spies. By this you shall be tested. By the life of Pharaoh, you shall not go from this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you and let him bring your brother while you remain confined, that your words may be tested whether there is truth in you. Or else, by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies. And he put them all together in custody for 3 days. For how many days? Interesting, isn't it? On the third day, remember, big things happen when you see that. On the third day, Joseph said to them, Do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers remain confined where you are in custody, and let the rest of you go and carry grain for the famine of your households, and bring your youngest brother to me. So your words will be verified, and you shall not die. And they did so. Then they said to one another, In truth, we are guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us, and we did not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us. What do we call that? What'd you say over here? Remorse? I was thinking more along a pagan term. Karma, right? Yes. You know what they say karma is, right? We won't say it out loud, just you know what it is. And then Reuben answered them, Did I not tell you not to sin against the boy, but you did not listen? So now there comes a reckoning for his blood. They did not know that Joseph understood them, for there was an interpreter between them. Then he turned away. Listen to this now. They did not know that Joseph understood them, for there was an interpreter between them. What was Joseph speaking? Egyptian. And did they see that he looked Egyptian? They did not recognize the fact that he grew up with a Hebrew tongue, right? Because he knew the language. Then he turned away from them and wept. Mixed feelings, perhaps? And he returned to them and spoke to them. And he took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. And Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain and to replace every man's money in his sack and to give them provisions for the journey. This was done for them. Then they loaded their donkeys with their grain and departed. And as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his money in the mouth of his sack. And he said to his brothers, My money has been put back. Here it is in the mouth of my sack. At this their hearts failed them, and they turned trembling to one another, saying, What is this that God has done to us? When they came to Jacob their father in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to him, saying, The Lord of the land, spoke roughly to us and took us to be spies of the land. But we said to him, We are honest men, and we've never been spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan. Then the Lord of the land, said to us, By this I shall know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me and take grain for the famine of your households and go your way. Bring your youngest brother to me. Then I shall know that you are not spies but honest men, and I will deliver your brother to you, and you shall trade in the land. As they emptied their sacks, behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw their bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob their father said to them, You have bereaved me of one of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more. And now you would take Benjamin? All this has come against me. Then Reuben said to his father, Kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you. But he said, My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is the only one left. If harm should happen to him on the journey that you are to make, you would bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol. It's not looking very good, is it? Now, the famine was severe in the land. And when they had eaten the grain that they had brought up from Egypt, their father said to them, Go again, buy us a little food. But Judah said to him, The man solemnly warned us, saying, You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you will send our brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. Israel said, Why did you treat me so badly as to tell the man that you had another brother? They replied, The man questioned us carefully about ourselves and our kindred, saying, Is your father still alive? Do you have another brother? What we have told him was an answer to these questions. Could we in any way know that he would say, Bring your brother down? And Judah said to his father Israel, Send the boy with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones. I will be a pledge of his safety. For my hand, or from my hand, you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. If we have not delayed, we would now have returned twice. I was hoping Judah was going to come into the story again because Judah is the line of Christ, remember? So, how is Judah here being a type of Christ then?
He's offering his own life.
He's offering his own life to bring Benjamin back safely. So, Jesus is going to offer his life, correct? So that we have eternal safety from sin, death, and the power of the devil. So again, beautiful typology that's being played out here in the text between all these characters. Many of them can be types of Christ. Is Reuben a type of Christ? Well, he offered the life of two sons, right? He was willing to sacrifice two sons for the greater good. So just something to think about as we continue to go through this. Then their father Israel said to them, If it must be so, then do this. Take some of the choice fruits of the land in your bags and carry a present down to the man, a little balm and a little honey, gum, myrrh, pistachio nuts, delicious, and almonds. Take double the money with you. Carry back with you the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take also your brother and arise. Go again to the man. May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, and may he send back your other brother and Benjamin. And as for me, if I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved. So the men took this present, and they took double the money with them and Benjamin. They arose and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. And when Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, Bring the men into the house and slaughter an animal and make ready, for the men are to dine with me at noon. The man did as Joseph told him and brought the men to Joseph's house. And the men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house. And they said, Is it because of the money which was replaced in our sacks the first time that we are brought in, so that he may assault us and fall upon us to make us servants and seize our donkeys? So they went up to the steward of Joseph's house and spoke with him at the door of the house and said, Oh, my Lord, we came down the first time to buy food. And when we came to the lodging place, we opened our sacks, and there was each man's money in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight. So we have brought it again with us, and we have brought other money down with us to buy food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks. He replied, Peace to you, do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your fathers has put the treasure in your sacks for you. I received your money. Then he brought Simeon out to them. And when the man had brought the men to Joseph's house and given them water, and they had washed their feet, and when he had given their donkeys fodder, they prepared the present for Joseph's coming at noon. Or they prepared, the present for Joseph's coming at noon, for they had heard that he should eat bread there. When Joseph came home, they brought into the house to him the present that they had with them, and bowed down to him to the ground. And he inquired, there's another fulfillment of again them bowing down to him. And he inquired about their welfare and said, "Is your father well? The old man of whom you spoke, is he still alive?" They said, "Your servant, our father, is well. He is still alive." They bowed their heads and prostrated themselves. He lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me? God be gracious to you, my son." Then Joseph hurried out, for his compassion grew warm for his brother, and he sought a place to weep, and he entered his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out. Controlling himself, he said, "Serve the food." They served him by himself, and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. That's funny. It was an abomination for the Egyptians for the Hebrews to eat with them. Wouldn't it be the other way around, that it would be an abomination for the Hebrews to eat with Egyptians?
Not yet. They haven't created those laws yet.
Right? Ceremonial laws have not been put in stone yet or on paper. All right, so they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at one another in amazement. Portions were taken to them from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. And they drank and were merry with him. What does that mean? When the Bible uses that term, the men were made merry, they were drunk. Okay, can y'all see up on the board what I'm circling right here with my pointer? Over here. This word. Mathusko. Mathutheson. All right, comes from Mathusko. That is the word to become drunk. Just so everybody's clear on that. The reason why I ask this, honestly, is because there are multiple times throughout the scriptures that people have become drunk. And I've always asked the question, is getting drunk a sin?
To the Baptist, yes.
Well, let me ask another question here. Did God know what the fruit of the vine was going to do to human beings when they drank a lot of it? Did he know what the guests at the wedding feast at Cana already were when he made the 2 bathtubs full of wine? They were already drunk. We know that because the master of the feast said the guest had already become drunk. The word Mathusko was used there in that particular text. This, by the way, is the Greek Septuagint, which is the Old Testament in Greek. Okay, so the reason why I'm asking the question is, I mean, you and I, there are times when we go out to eat, you have a couple of glasses of wine, you get a little tipsy, a little lightheaded, you go to a wedding, you have a couple, 2 or 3, 4, 6 glasses of wine. Okay, you get tipsy so that you can get out on the dance floor. Right? You go down, you have from time to time, you have beer, you have alcohol, you have, whatever. It makes you drunk. Getting drunk on occasion, every once in a while, and I'm not saying drunk. I'm not talking about falling down. I'm just saying you get to feeling good. You're merry is not a sin. When Jesus or when the Bible is talking about drunkenness, it's a completely different terminology. Same word, different terminology. When you're getting drunk on a continual basis, this is like any sin, correct? When you're doing any sin that is on a continual basis, that is when it becomes sinful. Okay? Because God knows exactly what fermented beverage was going to do to his creation. He gave it to us to have, to enjoy certain things in life. Just like wine, I believe, is one of the finer things in life. I believe cigars are one of the finer things in life. Okay? So having a delicious Weston wrapped cigar is yummy. Okay? I want y'all to know that I have a smoking buddy in the congregation. His name is Tony Barnes. Tony Barnes is a cigar smoking machine. All right. So when I go to Tony's house, I usually come bearing gifts because he likes to smoke those cheap, box cigars, that you get down at, the local drugstore. So I don't know what, but I usually bring him Weston cigars, or I bring him, nice acid cigars from this new cigar shop down here so that you know, he can have whatever he wants, obviously. But I'm just saying, I like bringing him gifts. But when it's nice and cool and not hot or cold outside, we sit outside on his deck and we enjoy a nice smoke together. Okay? So, any of you fellas that are in the mood, let me know. But the point being is that I believe that God's given us things that anything that you do in excess can be very bad for you. Just like me having, a whole pan of sticky buns every day is bad for me. All right. Do you see what I'm saying? Everything can be bad, but to have some of these things that we consider to be the finer things of life, these are blessings from God, I believe. He gave us the ability to grow them and to harvest them and to, whatever. Just some thoughts there. I think I'm going to stop there because it is 11:30 now. And we'll pick up with the test, how this continues to play out next week. All right, everybody, let's pray. Father, we give you thanks this day for bringing us to your house to be fed and nourished by your word and sacrament. And as always, we see that life tries to sell us what the good life is. But in reality, all these things in this life are passing away. But I do believe that some of the good things that we experience in this life are only foretaste of the good things that are to come, the better things, the most amazing things we'll ever imagine. So, Father, help prepare us, get us ready for the day whenever you come again and usher in your eternal kingdom. We ask that you be with us now as we all go our separate ways. Keep us safe, keep us from all harm and danger as we have some weather coming in this week, and keep us from freezing to death and minus 14 temperatures on Wednesday. We ask that you be with us now and bless us. In your name we pray. Amen. Do y'all realize that whenever we say at the service, I was just looking at the text this week. There were so many things, so many different angles with the blessings and the woes. When we say at the end of the service, "Bless we the Lord," has anybody ever thought, why do we bless God? Has anybody ever heard the explanation of this? There is a Hebrew word, barak, which is the word for blessing, but it also means praise. So when we say, "Bless we the Lord," it's the same as saying, "Praise we the Lord." Praise ye the Lord. You're supposed to stand up and sit down when you do this, okay? All right. See y'all later, everybody. There you go. Why not? Wherever you're going to have lunch, I want to go, okay?